And it's just it's exciting to see so many people here thinking about the role of community. And I think that's really appropriate because for me, the relationship between my life as an entrepreneur and my commitment to community is pretty much inextricable. And I'm struck being on campus here by how much I really miss being at Oberlin. I really miss being at Oberlin. Apparently I cannot, in fact, go back in time. But I realize, I kind of wonder how much of my interest in building communities online has been in some ways trying to rediscover the kind of community that I really experienced for the first time when I was here at Oberlin. And so it happens, because I'm also a geek, I guess, that my way of trying to recreate community has been to do it online through social networks. And so it's that thing of when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So of course, to me, the challenge of entrepreneurship looks a lot like the challenge of creating social networks, and that's what I think about a lot. And so I just wanted to talk about a few particular ways in which I think my experience of entrepreneurship has been really similar to our approach to creating social networks. And I think one of the key things there is that what you create is completely unpredictable. Whatever you think you're creating is almost certainly not what you're actually creating. So, an example of that in our work is we work with an amazing credit union in Canada that is called Vancity. It's the largest credit union in Canada, and they do a lot of community work. And they hired us to create an online community for them called Change Everything. And the concept our work was to kind of come up with, well, what should they do with this? All they had when they engaged us was this URL, changeeverything.ca, and we suggested to them, let's use that to engage people in a conversation about what kinds of change they want to make in their own lives, in the community, or in the world. And we created this site, and we didn't really know what was going to happen there. About 4 months into the site, Vancouver went through a real cold snap. And it is Canada, but Vancouver is not actually normally a very brutal place. And so there are a lot of people who live on the street without a lot of shelter. And so the moderator for the site put this note up saying, hey, does anyone have hats that they could maybe contribute? I'm happy to drive around for the day and pick some stuff up if anyone has any clothes. And she got a response, sure, I'm happy to donate some stuff. And then someone else suggested that maybe they had a car that they could lend to help Kate drive around. And if you scroll down and scroll down and scroll down, you'll see that in about 72 hours, the community mobilized and collected 90 bags of clothing for people who were homeless on the street in a cold snap. And it's a small example, but for those folks, it was really a significant benefit, and also for the people who were able to participate in a direct and meaningful way in their community. And that was not a model for change that we ever had in mind when we created this site. But we didn't know what we were getting into. And similarly, for speaking personally, I didn't set out to create a web strategy, let alone a web development company. I have a PhD in political science, and when people ask me what kind of training you need to be an entrepreneur, a PhD in political science is not the correct answer. So that's why this is actually this 2 days is my business school, so thank you. And my dissertation was on something called hacktivism, people who do political computer hacking. And so to take an example, one of the examples I looked at was folks who created this tool for jamming Mexican and US military sites in solidarity with the Zapatistas in Mexico. Seems like very improbable preparation for anything practical, except it turned out that when I finished my graduate work, the web was in the middle of this shift towards more participatory sites. And all the thinking that I've been doing around how and why people mobilize and participate actively in politics online, admittedly in a pretty extreme form, actually gave me some really useful insights. And my husband and I were both blogging a lot about the tools that we were exploring and our thoughts on how they could affect people's ability to act politically. And based on our blogging, people started calling us and asking us for advice, and then hiring us to help them figure out what they should do, and then hiring us to build the thing that we'd figured out they should build. And one day we looked at each other and we said, do we have a business? And in fact, before my husband even left his job, we hired our first employee. And that was 2.5 years ago. We're now five-person company, and then we have about half a dozen development companies who work with us to build different projects and sites for our clients. What makes this a social enterprise, and I guess how I've earned my place on this stand, is that we only work on projects that have a sustainability or community focus. And part of what that has allowed us to do is to just understand a little bit more about, I think, the analogies between sort of social entrepreneurship and social networking. So another thing I would have to observe is true in both cases, is that transparency is your absolute best friend. And I think that's true for a lot of entrepreneurs. So in the case of social networks, we created a social network called Net Squared for an organization that supports about 70,000 nonprofits in the U.S. with technology advice and software. And when we launched the Net Squared site, one of the things it was supposed to do was support a conference, and that turned into a contest for to find the best technology projects among nonprofits in the U.S. and abroad. And in the first year's contest, we ran into a schmozzle with voting rules, and those of my professors in the room might or might not remember that quantitative skills weren't my strong suit, but I ended up having to disentangle the voting results. And we were just totally transparent with the community throughout that whole process, and that was what allowed people to have trust in us and have trust in how it was working. And I would say the same thing is true for our business as entrepreneurs. Our first year, we worked really hard to convince everybody that we knew exactly what we were doing. And our second year, we decided to admit that we didn't. And I have to say, things have gotten a hell of a lot easier. And I think it's really hard. I don't think it's just a problem for entrepreneurs. I think we live in a culture where people are not supposed to admit weakness. And for us, the experience of asking for help has been absolutely humbling and extraordinary. And what we've discovered is that our clients have become our mentors, our competitors have become our closest advisors. The wonderful thing about the space of social enterprise is that we're all ultimately on the same side, right? Everybody's trying to affect social change. And other folks who work in social technology don't really care if they end up with a web development contract or we end up with a web development contract. The point is to make sure something really great comes out at the other end. And being able to be open about what you're learning so that everybody can move forward together is really crucial, and being able to ask for help is really crucial to being able to move forward yourself.